FanDuel gives SMU the third shortest odds to win the national championship among ACC teams. So is the ACC just bad, or is SMU primed for a college football playoff run?
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On SMU here on a Friday, rounding out yet another week of the offseason. My name is Grayson Singleton. We are the #1 sports podcast network that is available. Also, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Coming up on the show today, SMU basketball, they are on the road in Tallahassee, Florida, as the Mustangs take on Florida State. Plus, upgrades to Rhett Lashlee staff. I like what they've done with the assistant coaching over the offseason. Obviously, this comes after losing Casey Woods, but I like what SMU's done, rounding out this staff. I'll tell you more about that to close up the show as well. Also, those of you on YouTube, yes, my camera looks a little bit crooked. We are kind of going in a little bit of a, let's just call it, making things work today. Some equipment definitely is not working today. But anyway, welcome on to the show. I'm Grayson Singleton. SMU's natty odds. And FanDuel has SMU listed as the third shortest odds to win the national championship among ACC teams. Now, I'm not going to try to convince you that SMU is going to win the national championship, because there's a lot that needs to be proven before we can even start uttering such a thing. But behind Miami, which is going to be obvious, and Clemson, SMU's got the third shortest odds among ACC teams. Now, to me, this doesn't state that, SMU's got a chance to win the national championship, because overall, those odds have SMU 27th on FanDuel, 27th likely to win the national championship. But it does tell me that whether it's ESPN, whether it's The Athletic, or whether it's FanDuel and the Sharps in Vegas, people believe SMU could contend at the top of the ACC. That's what that says to me. And obviously, one of the barriers to entry in terms of the college football playoff is, do you win your conference? And how do you stack up amongst potential at-larges? And that's what this says to me. It says to me that there is a path that is not all that unbelievable to SMU getting back to the college football playoff. And I believe with the structure that they have on the squad, from coaching staff, which I'm going to talk about being improved, to a returning quarterback who should be one of the best returning quarterbacks in the country, I believe that wholeheartedly, to the transfer portal additions that they have had. Kendrick Raphael, a couple of tight ends as well, defensive playmakers. There is a path that is not all that unforeseeable to where SMU gets back to the college football playoff. And at that point, anything's possible. Miami made it all the way to the national championship, and they were the 10 seed. But it also says something more so about the world of college football that we live in now. And that world being that you can drop a game, maybe two, and get hot at the right time. And as long as you have won the right games, you can have a chance to compete for a national championship. You don't have to be perfect. This year's SMU team is a great example of this. Drop the game to Baylor, drop the game to TCU, drop the game to Wake Forest, and you were still within one game of going to the ACC championship game. And if you win that game, you're in the playoff. And at that point, who knows? At that point, who the hell knows what SMU is going to end up doing in the college football playoff? They could have been one and done. They could have won a couple of games. And we'd be all sitting here having very different conversations about who's on the roster and how we feel about it going into 2026. It's an anything is possible world, like we talked about on Thursday. And all you got to do to get into an expanded field of now 12, might go even deeper, but all you have to do is be good enough in conference play, get to your conference championship, and if you're in a Power 4 conference, you're going to be right there in the conversation for being selected into the playoff. If the Mustangs lose one conference game, go to the ACC championship game, and let's just say lose that. So you've got 2 losses, and you were the runner-up in the ACC. SMU's probably in the college football playoff. Because at that point, you know who you would have beaten? Notre Dame, who's going to be a preseason top 10 team. So if that were to happen, SMU's going to the playoff, and who knows what could happen after that. So it doesn't necessarily mean, when I look at these odds and I see that among ACC teams that SMU has the third shortest odds, and by the way, those odds are plus 12,500 on FanDuel, but it doesn't necessarily speak to me that SMU can go win a national championship. What it does say is that they've got a chance. They've got a chance, and in the new world of college football, all you need is that chance. All you need is to get there. Just get there. Get to the conference championship, which I am very much of the mindset that they are more than capable of being able to do. This team is capable of getting to the championship game. And you get to the championship game, if your resume is good enough, you may not even have to win it, but let's just say SMU does win it. I mean, before Indiana, the last team to knock off Miami in a game were the SMU Mustangs. Just throwing that out there. Just a thought. By the way, we think Miami's quarterback is going to be Darian Mensah, but we don't know that. So who's going to play quarterback for them? How many teams in the ACC are definitively better than SMU? Miami, sure. Clemson, we don't know. Virginia Tech, we think we like Virginia Tech, but we don't know. Virginia could be solid again under Tony Elliott. But that's the thing, we don't know. We don't know anything. What we know is SMU's been 14-2 in 2 years in the ACC. And if that trend were to continue, I think the Mustangs are in the ACC championship game once again. And as long as their resume overall looks solid enough, that could be good enough to get you in the college football playoff. And then at that point, you're in the field of 12, and we're off and running. And you don't know what could happen. There's a wide variance of things that could happen in a 12-team college football playoff. So I think when I see these odds, SMU's got a chance. They have a chance to do something good. And we're building on yesterday when I talked about that it's anybody's game. Anything is possible. Why not SMU? And it seems to be that national people, national voters, people who follow the sport from a macro perspective, see SMU as a team that could crash the party. Maybe not win it, maybe not hang out for very long, but they can get their foot in the door, just like they did a couple of years ago. I look at this situation with SMU and I say, this team has a more clearer path than we give it credit for. Doesn't mean it's not going to be difficult. Doesn't mean it's not going to be challenging. Doesn't mean that they might step in a pothole between now and then. But I look at it and I look at the landscape of the ACC and I look at the roster that SMU has constructed and what they have coming back and the continuity between coach and quarterback. And it seems like a lot of people are getting behind. This is a team whose path back to the college football playoff is not as daunting as we otherwise think. It's a lot clearer once you step back and look at it than we realize. All right, good start to the show. Coming up next, SMU basketball. They're playing Florida State on Saturday after the big win at Wake Forest. They have to avoid a letdown, and they're in a very tricky spot. We'll tell you about that on the other side. Keep it here on Locked On SMU on a Friday. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack unloaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. And they let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. All you got to do is you make your picks and then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day with FanDuel. All right, welcome back to the show here on Locked On SMU. Appreciate you making us your first listen of the day. Make sure if you're new here, subscribe to the YouTube channel and also rate us on the podcast as well. Give us a review as well. We love to hear your feedback, and I, as always, love to interact with you all in the comments as well. Or you can find me on Twitter at Gray_Singleton2. We also want to tell you about our Everydayer Club here on Locked On SMU. If you make us your first listen of the day, we appreciate you. And if you haven't already, go ahead and check out that Everydayer Club. Access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On SMU that's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other major podcast distributors. You'll get an ad-free version of that so you can listen to us uninterrupted at the gym, in the car, wherever. Plus, an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server so you can hang out with other SMU fans, other college football fans, and even some of our hosts as well. So it's $5 a month, $50 for the whole year. Go to lockedonsmu.supercast.com to learn more. Okay, SMU basketball taking on Florida State after the big win over Wake Forest. And when I say a big win, I mean it was a pretty big win because SMU really took apart Wake Forest, answered every run, quelled momentum. Just a really well-played game. One of their best played games all year long. Now, I mentioned at the top, and I said that they were going on the road. They are going to be at home versus Florida State. So the Seminoles are coming to Dallas. And SMU is in a tricky spot. They're in a very tricky spot. On one hand, FSU is the next to last team in the conference. They're 1-5 in conference play, 8-11 overall. This is also a team in Florida State that just knocked off Miami. A team that we had begun to think was going to be pretty good. And they're still 4-2 in the conference, 15-5 overall, 15-4 overall is Miami. But Florida State is feeling themselves right now. Florida State is coming off of that 2-point win where they closed down the stretch. They were a team that was able to throw punches with a Miami team. And then ultimately, as the game was going back and forth, was nip and tuck the whole way, it was Florida State that closed it out in a big way, pulling off that upset. So it's a Seminole team that is coming in with a lot of confidence, and they have a formula for how to do this. They held Miami to 25% from three-point line. 25%. They can get up in you, and they can guard you, and they can take away airspace. Now, this does not overshadow the fact that Florida State is still 8-11, which is emblematic of a bad basketball team in college basketball if you're 8-11 in the Power Four. But this is a really tricky spot because you have an emotional win for the Seminoles, probably your best win for SMU. But if you're SMU, your win was kind of riding the ship. For Florida State, they're building confidence. And now they're ready to take it on the road to Dallas. So if you're SMU, you cannot have a letdown here. You have to continue every good thing that you built in that game against Wake Forest. That has to be continued into this game here on Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And what does that look like? Well, for one, it looks like keep up the rebounding effort. I said it before the Wake Forest game that SMU needs to hold Wake Forest under double-digit offensive rebounds. They gave up 16 last weekend in the loss to Virginia. I said you have to cut that in half. Lo and behold, they cut it in half. You walk out of there with a decisive victory over the Demon Deacons. I think they need to hold Florida State to 8 offensive rebounds or fewer. Keep getting better in that department. Don't give up open shots off of offensive rebounds. Don't put yourself in adverse situations where you're in the scramble drill. And then you can get out and run. I don't think it's a coincidence that B.J. Edwards had his best game as a Mustang in a game where you rebounded the ball better. Because the Mustangs as a team are better when they can get out in transition, play in the open floor, and really get up and down, make it a high possession, high shot game, and that's how you play in the 90s. That is where SMU is at its best. But you know when you can't do that? You can't do that when the defense can get back after a made basket and set up their defense. And a way that you do that is by capitalizing on second chance opportunities. So the Mustangs can really have a chance to get out and run and play their brand of basketball when they hold the opposing team to one shot. And it showed in that Wake Forest game. It was a night and day difference, the Virginia game and the Wake Forest game. And Florida State is not as good as Wake Forest is. By no means. Wake Forest is not a good team. Florida State, is not a good team. And I don't want to undersell them, but they're just not. The proof has been in the resume. They've lost 11 of their 19 games, but they can be scrappy. They can be physical. They can make you work. And if you don't answer the bell, they can take the game away from you. So SMU cannot let us down. They cannot let us down in this game at home. They've come up with some heroics at home. They did so to beat Virginia Tech, and that was all great and awesome. It was fantastic. But you almost let that one slip away. And that was a winnable game. Ultimately, you did win it. But going forward, the question now for SMU is going to become, who are you? Are you a team that can win a few games? Or are you a team that can put stretches of good basketball together? Because that's ultimately how you advance in the ACC tournament and potentially the NCAA tournament, is whether or not you can sustain and build stretches of excellent basketball. I thought they played not perfect, but excellent basketball against Wake Forest. They played really good basketball. Can you take that from that game into this Florida State game? And then after that, you close up January next Saturday at Louisville, currently ranked 23rd in the country. That will be a quad one game. I don't know if Louisville will still be in the top 25, but it will be a quad one game. I guarantee you that. So you're going to have to put together stretches of really good basketball. And it starts with avoiding a letdown against Florida State in Saturday's game tomorrow afternoon. All right, one more segment to go. Rhett Lashlee has upgraded his staff, brought on some guys from South Oak Cliff, brought back a very intriguing, or brought into the fold, a very intriguing assistant coach. We'll talk about what all of this means, not just for SMU this year, but going forward as well past 2026 here on Locked On SMU. Stay with us. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever for you to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. And they can handle anything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every single deduction. And it's easy. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February the 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. That's turbotax.com/local today with TurboTax. All right, final segment here on Locked On SMU, And Rhett Lashlee, I think, has made some interesting tweaks to his staff. Now, we began the offseason with former offensive coordinator Casey Woods heading out the door. Running backs coach Tyler Foster also exited the program as well. So you had a couple of departures. But since then, you've had some very intriguing additions. And the most recent one is veteran offensive line coach Sam Gregg, who has now joined the program. And he has coached with a few SMU staffers before. So this is a guy that's going to be familiar with some of the names that are already in the program. But I found this interesting that he's going to assist Scott Simons in diagnosing offensive schemes. Now, I'm one of those people, I'm going to be real with you. I'm one of those people that believe that there is a point of diminishing returns in terms of, are there too many voices? But I do think this is interesting. I think this is interesting because if you can have a guy that has been around the block a number of times, if you can have a guy who, who has seen a lot of offenses, and you pair him with a great play caller, a guy who can scheme up things, I think that 2 + 2 can equal 4. I think that is a combination where those two people can do some really good things. Even though I do still believe at times, and some of you guys can agree with me on this, that there's sometimes just too many voices. And sometimes if there's too many voices, the message can get muddied and all of that, and so on and so forth. That can happen. But I do think that if you have a set hierarchy and you bring in a guy like that who can say, all right, hey, I'm going to clear this up for you. Here's what I think is going on with this offense. All right, cool. Let me get in my bag right here, and I'm going to pull this out to counteract it. I do think that's a nice pairing and a nice combination. I'm here for that. So that to me is an interesting add. Now, the other day, South Oak Cliff defensive coordinator Kyle Ward joined SMU as a guy who's going to coach the safeties. Obviously, we talked yesterday about Jimmy Wyrick coming over from UTSA. Jimmy Wyrick, an alum of South Oak Cliff. By the way, this is South Oak Cliff assistant number 2 that has been added to the staff along with Riley Dodge. We talked yesterday about Calvin Thibodeau being instrumental in the Amari Vickerson recruitment and ultimately SMU landing his commitment. And I think the last month or so, maybe a little bit less than a month, last 3 weeks or so, ever really since Riley Dodge was hired from for SMU from South Lake Carroll, we've seen the value of Rhett's assistance. And Rob Likens is going to continue to coach the receivers. Garrett Justice is going to continue to coach the offensive line. Kyle Cooper is there with the running backs and so on and so forth and all those names. But whether it's Calvin Thibodeau, the arrival of a guy like Kyle Ward, the arrival of a guy like Riley Dodge, coaches, I've been told, they know that their program gets elevated or fails to reach its potential based on the assistants. The assistants make a huge, huge deal when it comes to the trajectory of your program. And I think, quite frankly, that Rhett Lashlee has set himself up very, very well. You've got inroads to all of Dallas now with the litany of assistants that are former Texas Preps coaches. You've got an inroads with Houston. And you just have a national brand. Like Riley Dodge is a national brand coming from South Lake Carroll because of how dominant South Lake Carroll has been in probably the number 1 high school football state in the United States of America. Bringing in a guy to help dissect and detect offensive schemes in the way that Sam Gregg is expected to do? That's big time. You're talking about getting more ammunition for Scott Simons, a guy who is widely regarded as one of the better defensive coordinators in the country. You got guys on top of guys, helping guys on top of guys who are highly regarded. It helps with recruiting. It helps with the transfer portal. It's going to help with in-game operations. And I think that even though there weren't any national headline-making additions, maybe Riley Dodge could qualify as that, but even in the portal, even though there wasn't a national ripple effect made by any one of SMU's additions, except maybe Kendrick Raphael, you kind of can't help but say, boy, the Mustangs got better this offseason. They got better. Yeah, they lost a lot of guys. Yeah, they lost Casey Woods. But in terms of recruiting, in terms of portal, in terms of overall makeup of a staff, SMU got better. And they're going to continue to go on this ascent as long as they continue to get better day in and day out with additions to the staff and to the players. And ultimately, the players have to go out and perform. But you as a program, you're going to be as good as the people that are in that building. And I think Rhett Lashlee has gotten good people in that building, good quality people. All right, that'll do it for Locked On SMU here today on this Friday. Appreciate you guys making us your first listen of the day. I hope you have a great, safe weekend. I know some of you down there in the Metroplex might be getting some weather, so make sure everybody stays safe and make sure you check out our Everydayer Club as well. If you never miss an episode, get Locked On SMU ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more for $5 a month. Only $5 a month or $50 a year. So head to lockedonsmu.supercast.com to join the club today. Those of you on YouTube, check out our 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, make sure you make your second listen of the day Locked On College Football. All right, we'll talk to you guys on Monday. Take it easy, everybody. Have a good weekend.